At this time, I call to order regular governing board meeting. Mr. Santa Cruz, can you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which
for which
it
it
stands,
stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call?
Madam President, Ms. Maria Guzman.
Here.
Board Clerk, Ms. Patricia Jimenez is currently not available. Board Member, Mr. Rudy Santa Cruz.
here.
Board Member, Mr. Harry Gerwell.
Present.
And Board Member, Ms. Kathy Rivera.
Present.
Do have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item is approval of September 10, 2020 regular governing board meeting agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
So, second.
Call for the vote. Motion carries. Next item is approval of minutes of August 20, 2020 regular governing board meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussions? Call for the vote. Motion carries. Next item is,
Madam President, I'm sorry to interrupt. May I ask if there's a board member that is listening to the YouTube? We are getting some feedback on this side. If you're logged into the YouTube to view our meeting, you do need to have that muted. You cannot be on the phone and also on the meeting at the same time. It creates audio issues. Thank you.
I'm not on YouTube, James.
thank you. Next item is governing board report. Mr. Santa Cruz?
Thank you. I have no report, but just want to make sure that everybody's safe, all the teachers and principals. I like to just keep the science on top all the time, and they'll tell us when it's time to go back to school. I'm like any grandparent or parent. We want our kids to go back to school, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. So we just keep an eye on the science. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gelwell?
Yes, Madam President. I just want to report that yesterday I attended a little bit of the ASBA law conference, and then today, for the most part, there were some really good updates, including legal and legislative updates on the rundown for capital and the work of school law that was presented, which really had some great insights. And I'll download all of the different packets that were presented and then forward them on. And then there was also a really good one about Arizona open meeting law as it relates to using platforms like the ones that we're using for YouTube or Zoom or the other ones, that are out there. And one of the interesting things that was brought up was, how much can the public participate? And there was some discussion about that. Public ought to be able to observe the actual meeting if we're using those types of platforms. Doesn't necessarily mean they can participate, but they can come in and watch and listen to all of the presentations that are being made, because that's still part of our requirement. So even though we're using telephonic, if we use platforms, virtual platforms, then that's going to require that the public has access to them as well. And then there was another one that was really interesting, which was, court orders of what happens when schools are caught in the middle of warring parents. And so as we see these things come about, some of them were pretty crazy, to tell you the truth. And then the one that was interesting was the new Title IX regulations on sexual harassment and the claims. So I think that's something that I'm sure Dr. Ventura and the administrative staff have already gotten some of that information. And then the protocols as far as signatures for vouchers and being able to go in and sign off on all those things as we normally had done if we were in the boardroom itself. So I think that was important. And then just the last one that was really, I thought was something that was very interesting was in regards to the Family Medical Leave Act, especially as it relates to during this time of the COVID. So I'll be on again tomorrow. There's a number of sessions on there. And some of them are going to be more towards, what are some of the initiatives that are on the ballot. So Propositions 207 and 208, we talked a little bit about that. The Invest in Ed and also on marijuana and how that money is going to be dispersed. So again, I think it's important just to be able to sit in and listen to all the different experts and then be able to bring that back. So I'll provide the handouts from those days, forward them to Dr. Ventura, and then he can go ahead and send them out to the rest of the board. So with that, Madam President, that ends my report.
Thank you. Ms. Rivera?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I'd just like to echo Mr. Santa Cruz's words that I just hope everybody is staying safe and healthy, and we will get through this virus one way or the other. The other thing is I just want to always thank all of you, admin, teachers, staff, all staff, because you're all working extremely hard to provide proper opportunities for our students and our families during this time. And it's challenging because this is all brand new. And I just keep reminding you guys, somebody needs to be taking notes and writing a book so that 50 years from now, if there's another pandemic, that school districts and teachers know how to get through a pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jimenez? Oh, she's not here, sorry. And then I'm next, Ms. Guzman. I have no report. Thank you. Next item is superintendent update.
Madam President, members of the board, just a couple of things. One is, yes, we are working really hard to make sure that we are staying engaged with our families. And even though it's challenging to teach online, I see parents and our teachers, our principals working hard to communicate and stay in touch with each other and work through some of these challenges together. So I'm really glad to see the efforts that are being put forth at all our schools. I'd also like to mention that we are really concerned also, like everyone else, about keeping everyone safe, and we are following our mitigation plans that we have in place, and we'll talk a little bit about that more this evening, and further updates about our mitigation plan coming up. Lastly, regarding the mitigation plan, we had our mitigation plan certified by a health expert. There's a company called Healthy Verify, and they had a medical doctor certify our plan to ensure that it follows all the CDC guidelines that are currently in place. And so when we do bring people onto our campuses, whether they're employees or visitors, students, that we have systems and processes in place to keep everyone safe. And we plan on having these town halls on Tuesday, the 28th, and then again on Thursday, the 24th of September. And one will be conducted in English and one will be conducted in Spanish. That concludes my report.
Thank you.
Madam President, just to clarify from Dr. Ventura's report, those town halls will be on Tuesday, the 22nd and the 24th.
Thank you. Next item is new business, information and discussion, action. A is status update, Maricopa County Department of Public Health School reopening dashboard and guidance of Isaac SD. Dr. Mario Ventura, Superintendent. Information. Dr. Ventura?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, tonight's presentation is regarding the Maricopa Department of Public Health and the Arizona Department of Education's school reopening dashboard and guidance benchmarks specifically for Isaac. So there are benchmarks that were created for the whole county, actually each county, zip codes and school districts. And tonight I'll be sharing the dashboard, the benchmarks, and also information specific to Isaac with data points regarding COVID-19 in our community. So to begin, the background of this presentation is that, like I said earlier, the Arizona Department of Education and Arizona Department of Health Services, they partnered together to create this guidance to support schools for a safe reopening. In this, called the Roadmap for Reopening, that was released back in June, it was communicated that we would have some type of data to look at for guidance in this reopening process, and so we can reduce the risk of transmission among staff and students. Considerations for reopening. Reopening schools is complicated, and this is just, again, providing guidance for how we can manage and work through this time where we have a virus still out and continue to provide instruction. What each school decides must be specific to the needs and circumstances. So as you know, our schools are all a little different and unique, so we've created guidance that goes along with that for reopening. And as more information comes, the guidance that's provided may change because we're learning more and more about the virus each and every day. Continued considerations for reopening. There are two key concepts or components of reopening school buildings. One is the first is the mitigation plan, or how we will reopen. As I mentioned earlier, each school is a little different. All their plans will be customized for school-specific needs. But the second level is what we're looking at is the level of spread in our community. And that's where we're going to spend most of our time on tonight, is looking at the level of spread and how we're measuring that within our community. And these are points to keep in mind as we consider reopening. But before I go into further into the presentation, I want to make it clear that this reopening guidelines, these benchmarks, these are just recommendations that the governor in his order, Executive Order 2020-51, gave us the opportunity to decide as they call it an institution, agency, educational agency, that we get to decide which benchmarks are important to us. We could add benchmarks as well, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But again, these are just recommendations. But I will tell you that most districts are looking at these and taking them seriously with some minor adjustments. So on page 5, reopening scenarios. Earlier in the year, we looked at different ways we could reopen schools depending on, or return to school, return to learning, depending on the level of spread in our community. So the first one, if we had low levels of spread and cases in our community, we could go back and open a traditional model. That's the green area that you see there. And if we looked at all three of the benchmarks available and we were in the green, we would be good to go and just open our doors and bring our kids back with some minor mitigation for health. In the hybrid model, it's okay. You can bring in kids in different types of models, maybe like an A and B week, or students coming on different schedules. You don't have all of the schools on campus at the same time. And if you have 3 of the benchmarks in yellow or green, it would be appropriate to open your schools in that scenario with moderate community spread. And then finally, the virtual with on-site support, that's where we are right now. We have 1 or more benchmarks in the red area, and so there's still risk for substantial spread, and we want to protect everyone. And so we continue to provide virtual instruction right now with on-site support for those students that need that. On page 6, these are the benchmarks that are provided by the county Department of Health. The first one we look at are the number of cases per 100,000 people. So right now in this benchmark, if you have less than 10 cases per 100,000 people, then you'd be in the minimal area. Moderate would be 10 to 100, and then substantial would be over 100. The next benchmark is percent positives, the number of people that go and get tested and come out positive. If you have less than 5%, you would be minimal. Moderate would be 5 to 10, and substantial would be over 10. And then the other benchmark they look at are COVID-like illnesses. When people go to the hospital with some kind of illness and they're not sure, but it could be something that related to COVID, or like the flu, or some other sickness that's in that category, that would be counted. So again, minimal would be less than 5, moderate would be 5 to 10, and substantial would be over 10. So on page 7, we have here our data that was provided the prior week. Now, prior week means this is the range of time between 8/23 through 8/29. In our Isaac community, we had 95.65 cases per 100,000, so that's still considered moderate. Our positive percent positive test rates in our community was 10.98, which is substantial. And then COVID-like illnesses in the hospitals was at 2%, which is minimal. But being that we have a substantial would not be a good time to open schools. The most recent data that came out today at 4 o'clock showed that we've dropped down to 73.91, and we are in the moderate range. Percent positive went up. It's still in the substantial, but it went up to 13.08%, and COVID-like illnesses stayed constant at 2%. So overall, for where we are right now, there is still substantial risk, and the recommendation from the Department of Health and ADE would be to stay in a virtual type learning environment, providing on-site support services. So again, recommendations for reopening. They recommend that we have at least 2 consecutive weeks with new cases rates below 100 per 100,000 people. Test percent positive to have 2 consecutive weeks with less than 7%. And then COVID-like illnesses, those percentage of hospital visits that, again, that have illnesses related to that COVID type illness or virus, below 10%. They would want you to have this consistently for 2 weeks to be able to resume in-person learning. There are opportunities for waivers, and that would be that you have some area where you have a very high benchmarks coming in. So the Department of Health does provide that opportunity. A school district would have to show that we have a weekly COVID case rate of 100 per population of 100 people or more. That's twice the level of the Maricopa County rate. So again, if we move forward to page 12, we can look at this scenario. The prior week data showed that we had 45 cases per 100. I'm sorry, that's the county rate, was 45 per 100. If you look down to the prior week for Isaac, we were at 95.65. So that would have counted, that 1 week would have counted towards a waiver. However, our most recent data, the county was at 51 cases per 100,000, and Isaac was at 73.91 cases per 100,000. So that would not allow us to qualify for a waiver. There are some districts that have applied. It's been a challenge to receive the waivers, but I have heard there's a few that have received them. So in summary, this dashboard provided to us by the Maricopa Department of Public Health for school reopening are just recommendations. Right now, our current recommendation for us, Isaac, is that we are still at a high risk, a substantial risk, and that we continue with virtual or on-site support. Conditions for the waivers, we do not meet those at this time. And again, I'd like to reiterate that these are just recommendations. It doesn't mean that we have to use these data points. One of the things I wanted to point out is when I look at the data that comes out, I look at our surrounding districts. Alhambra School District, for their most recent data point, they were at 43 per 100,000 people, 43% 43 cases, and their positivity rate is 6.16, which is it's more than it's less than half. I'm sorry, it's about half of what we have right now. We're at about 13. So what I'm saying is, Alhambra is our next door neighbor. They have schools that are literally a stone throws away from Pueblo del Sol, but their data is different than ours. So what they're trying to do is provide data for a large area. So even though it's more specific for districts, it's still not completely accurate. And we have to take these other things into consideration as well. The other thing I'd like to share with you, when we look at our demographic data, that the average age of our families here in the Isaac community is 55, and those people in that age range are more susceptible to the virus and could end up in the hospital if they have other type of conditions that put them at higher risk. So these are things that we as an organization need to consider before we reopen, that it's really not provided within the benchmarks or guidelines. At this point, I'll take any questions the governing board may have regarding the dashboard provided by the County Department of Health.
Is there any question from the board?
Madam President, I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead,
Please.
Ms. Rivera.
Thank you. Dr. Ventura, and I know this is the Maricopa County information, but they're only talking about cases that have been reported. Am I correct?
Correct. So again, that's a really good point, because we know that there's probably a lot more cases out there. And I will share with you another concern that I have is that there seems to be like a fatigue now. You know, everyone's burnt out with coronavirus. All of us are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are less people being tested. So when you have less people being tested, the data, your data pool is smaller. And so it's hard to have accurate data. It could be more or less, you know, when you have less data points.
Right. I mean, because, yeah, I never got tested. Nobody in my family's ever gotten tested, and I don't know that my neighbors have been tested. And people could have had it that never got a test because it was at the time when it was impossible to get one. It's still not that easy to get one. And then people could be negative this week and catch it and be positive next week, correct? So you'd have to have more of a consistent testing system.
Yes, you are correct.
Am I right?
Yes, you are.
So we're just basing it on whatever data we have, which is pretty much not probably what the reality is, right?
Correct. So yes, and
Okay.
that's what every district is facing, and some districts are going
Right.
to say we don't care, we're going to open anyways, and some, like I believe our board is more cautious and conscientious about the health and safety of our community. I will share with you, because of exactly what you're saying, Mrs. Rivera, we are seeking out with our partnerships to provide more opportunities for testing. So we can provide them, we just have to get people to come out and get tested, because again, with more data points, you can have more accurate information about when to reopen and how safe it is.
Yeah, I think if the county was really serious about them, well, I shouldn't blame the county, whoever the powers that be that should be doing it. There's got to be a way to have more accessible testing, and where people that don't have health insurance don't have to pay for it. There's a whole realm of things that have to happen, but I'd be really scared to open up right now without really, really knowing what the number is and what the data really, really is. Anyway, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question from the board?
Ms. Guzman, just a couple of comments. Dr. Ventura, one of the things that came up during the law conference was, the requirements for reporting out from school districts. Can you address that a little bit? Does every school district have to report directly to the county or the state, every one of their cases?
Yes, but there are some specifics to that. So we have to prove or have some kind of understanding that it's a breakout. So what a breakout is when you have two people or more that were in the same area that tested positive. So recently I notified the governing board that we had a situation where we had a teacher that tested positive, and one of the persons that she worked with, even though we asked them to work in their classrooms, we don't know how it happened, but they got within 6 feet of each other for a period of time, and now that a second person tested positive, and because they were at the same school and spent time together in the same area, we had to report that to the county. But you could have a situation where we have, for example, in the district office, it's a large building. Let's say that I test positive, and then within 14 days, someone in human resources tested positive, but we don't interact, we haven't crossed paths, something like that would not be reported.
Okay, well, and the purpose for my question was, and you just stated it, if it's less than 2, then it doesn't have to be recorded. So one of the things that was pointed out is that there's 260 plus school districts, and how many campuses are there, and how many more students would you have on there if it was just 1 per campus? And the reason I raised that is because even as recent as last week, Arizona State University was not reporting all of its cases on campus. But Dr. Crow just recently came out and started to report those numbers. So to Ms. Rivera's point, there is a propensity for underreporting the number of cases. And I think that's why it's even that much more important for us to look at the positivity rate, because that's a really good indicator for us, because the number of cases per 1,000 is always skewed. And it's just because of the way the rules are written right now that we're not getting a good, true representation of, how many cases there really are. So I just wanted to point that out as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question from the board? Thank you. Next item is approval of Isaac School District Arizona Online Instruction AOI program, Isaac Online Prep Academy, Dr. Erica Avila, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, and Mr. Aaron Harris, Director, Grant and Federal Program. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Dr. Avila?
Good evening, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, and Isaac community. Before the governor announced that the schools would be able to operate virtually without an improved program, the Isaac School District approved for and received provisional approval to operate an Arizona online instruction program through the Arizona State Board of Education. We are currently on a statewide approved AOI list, but to move forward and receive an active entity ID, the Arizona Department of Education requires board approval on this item. We recommend that the governing board approve a new Arizona online instruction school named the Isaac Online Prep Academy. This approval will enable the school district to provide virtual learning opportunities for our students that choose to learn remotely, even after the reopening of school facilities. At this time, we have our Director of Federal Programs and Grants, Mr. Aaron Harris, who will present the Arizona Online Instruction Program. Mr. Harris?
Thank you, Dr. Avila. Good evening, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, Dr. Ventura, members of the community. The purpose of this evening's presentation is to present our Isaac Online Preparatory Academy for approval. For the 2021-2022 school year, ISD intends to offer an Arizona Instruction Online program that will allow us to expand our learning opportunities for students and families who choose to continue learning remotely. And on July 23rd, ISD received a provisional approval from the state to offer a district AOI program. Now, in order to be fully approved, as Dr. Avila stated, we will need governing board approval to offer an Arizona online instruction program after this school year ends and our remote learning plan expires. So the mission of the Isaac Online Prep Academy aligns with our district's mission, but reflects distant digital learning. And the philosophy of our program reflects, again, the mission and vision of our school district and the goals included in our strategic plan, growing great learners together. On June 24th, 2020, Executive Order 2020-41, prioritizing kids and schools during COVID-19 was created regarding the reopening of schools. And so the Isaac School District submitted an application to offer distance remote learning because we did not have an approved Arizona online instruction program. So we submitted our application and we were approved on July 31st to offer distance learning for this school year. And so the Isaac Online Prep Academy instructional program will allow students to take their core instructional courses, English, science, math, and social studies, from a state-approved high-quality curriculum with support from highly qualified teachers. And the Isaac Online Prep Academy has been established using the following state board criteria. There's 4 points there that the state requires for approval. And so our program definitely meets those 4 points. We will offer, again, a full comprehensive online school that utilizes a web-based instructional program that supports teacher-led instruction on the internet for all students, a breadth and depth of learning that will increase as students advance their knowledge, protection of the potential negative effects of the internet, and full protection for privacy of the students' educational records and any communications between teacher, student, and parents. And last, our ISD online program will utilize an online platform that's fully accredited by Advanced Ed and has a sustained and exemplary commitment to continuous improvement for student learner outcomes. So this ends the presentation for the Isaac Online Prep Academy. Thank you, Madam President, members of the governing board. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions from the board? No.
Madam President, just really quick.
Ms. Rivera?
Excuse me. Is this, it's Kathy Rivera. Who?
Go ahead,
Madam
Ms.
President?
Rivera.
Oh, okay, thank you. Is this funded through regular M&O, or are we funding it differently, or is there ideas on how to fund it?
Ms. Rivera, this is Lynn
Yeah.
Lang. This would be like a school in itself. It is a separate entity, and we would receive state funding based on ADM, just like we do with our other students.
I see. Okay. All right. It's kind of a school within a school. It's not charter. We're not looking at a charter, right?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Call for the vote.
Madam President, just because we cannot see the screen at the moment, I do have a unanimous motion carried.
Okay, motion carries. Next item is consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the whole consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's a second. Call for the vote. Motion carries. Next item is information calendar, September 17th, HOI weekly food bag from 8 to 10. Oh, that's the Heart of Isaac weekly food bag. From 8 to 10 a.m., September 30, October 2nd, 2020 Parent Teacher Conference. October 5th through the 9th, 2020 Fall Break. Enrollment is at 5,398. Next governing board meeting will be Thursday, October 1st, 2020 at 5 p.m. Telephonic. And now we're going into executive session. Okay, so I read this one, right? Okay, approval to convene executive session for the purpose of discussing or consulting for legal advice with district attorney action procedure. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So we go?
I need to, Madam President, as a point of order, we do need to take a vote on this.
Okay. Call for the vote. Motion carries. So we'll be going into executive session?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. executive session. Next item is to approval to end executive session and reconvene regular session. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Call for the vote.
Oh, I'm not, can I do it verbally? I'm not,
Yes, that's
Mr.
fine.
I'm
Rivera
not on
and
my
Mr.
i,
Guerrero, if
I'm
you
not
would
on
like.
my iPad.
Board members, Mr. Guerrero and Mr. Rivera, if you'd like to do verbal votes, you are able to do that.
Okay, aye.
Hi, I did vote, by the way, so I'm on.
You didn't come up?
Yes, Mr. Rivera, I do have that. Madam President, I do have 5 A's. Motion
Okay.
carries.
Motion carries. Next, next item is if there's no objection, meeting adjourns. Thank you.